Thanks for the chat, Ethan. We were wondering who Courtney was.
We were waiting for a couple more minutes to see if who else was gonna show up, but now we know we have not just the minimum 4 for quorum, but 5.
Aha. Well, that's good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
How's that baby?
He's good. Do you want to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so cute.
I can't see anything. What's
Now we have
going on?
5.5 committee members here.
Yeah.
But,
What's he got?
Aaron,
He's eating a mango pip right now. He's very happy.
He's saying,
Yeah, that
you can sit at the table, and there's food over here if you want to.
All right, I'll take some.
is this his first very boring public meeting?
It is, yes. Is he thrilled?
You're all-
I think it's more about his mango pip than anything, but yeah, he's a happy boy.
I would be pretty happy to on that too.
Yeah. In person, I was like, oh, it's like, I coming in person? I'm not sure. Sorry, I have Aaron's name back from the first meeting. I didn't bring anything back for you, but we'll do it.
Well,
I don't get it. No reason to bring it. Okay. And there's an agenda that's printed off there, a packet if you're interested in following along. Sure.
Oh,
Good.
good.
People busy?
Oh, man.
Just a little?
Yeah. Busy time. I had a day off in a month and a half.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
busy season for wolves too.
Yeah.
Aaron just collared one the other day.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on the reservation.
He caught one and put a
Not-
GPS collar.
But not one of our Matovias.
Okay. No, not one of the totally is.
Wayward wolves.
Yeah.
Not the upper Deschutes either. Also wayward wolves.
Is that a White River? Is that what that group is?
It's the Warm Springs, so it's on the south end of the Warm Springs Reservation. So there's 2 packs that spend a lot of their time on the reservation. The White River's at the north, the Warm Springs at the south.
White River was the first one that was established on Warm Springs, so in 2016, 17.
17.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Thanks everyone for making it to, I think this is kind of like close to our anniversary.
It is.
Yeah.
Our anniversary meeting, a moment to reflect on, a year of committee activity. We've gotten through the whole process of figuring out how to get people compensation for depredations and losses, and the next year, I think a big chunk of what we're going to be doing is trying to figure out how to help move prevention forward, and hopefully not dealing with that many more losses either. But we're set. We know how to do that. I just start the meeting by going around the table and doing some introductions. We can start with people who don't have their mouths full. Jen, you want to start?
Jen Patterson, Deschutes County Staff Strategic Initiatives Manager and the staff liaison for the Wolf Committee.
I'm Aaron Bott. I'm the wolf biologist for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I cover all of Central and Northwestern Oregon.
I'm Emily Widener. I'm the wolf lead for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Benfield office. I cover everything from the crest of the Cascades all the way over to Harney County, from the Oregon-California border up to the Oregon-Washington border.
Scott Leeson, I'm one of the livestock owners, I guess, on the wolf committee.
Bill Chang, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Gordon Jones, from Camp Sherman area, and I think I represent the ecological tourism.
You're one of our 2 business representatives, right?
Yes, that's true.
And
For the record.
Yes.
Donna Harris, coexistence advocate on the Wolf Committee.
I'm Scott Dugan, Oregon State University Livestock Extension Agent for Central Oregon.
For joining us, Scott. And Ethan Courtney, do you want to?
Yep, I'm Ethan. I'm another livestock livestock producer representative like Johnny. I just want to apologize to everyone for not being there today. We had a bit of a kerfuffle with planning on things, but I also want to say congratulations, Phil, on re-election. Just while I've got you.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, really happy I can give 100% of my attention to things like wolves for the next 6 months instead of having to campaign.
Hey.
Good stuff.
Yeah, all right, so let's go ahead and jump in. In your packet, there were meeting minutes from April 1st. I entertain a motion to approve those minutes, or if anyone has any requested revisions, amendments, anything like that, now would be a good time to read them.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second it.
Second, yep.
Seconded. All those in favor?
I
Any opposed? Motion carries. Right.
Or we have somebody else running at some point.
Oh. Richard Coe from the Bullet. Hello, Richard. Okay, so item number 3. Update on the subcommittee meeting that. Perfect timing. Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Steve Papa. As far as we go.
Steve holds one of the other business representative seats on the committee. We were just at the update on the subcommittee meeting from Steve and Ethan and Doug. And which of you would like to lead this item?
I'll let Steve do it since he had it printed up and we couldn't print it from the type of file he had for us. That's my excuse.
I got it there eventually.
Okay.
Basically, we looked at the applications that the Department of Agriculture had, which were pretty inclusive as to what kind of information we were looking for. So we made a cover page that just goes with it. And basically it outlines what the committee is here for, what we're supposed to be doing. And that we will help with filling out the application and what it's for. So that was, it's 1 page, 1.5.
Yep, I think we have it in here.
There should be a draft.
Yeah, almost. Huh. Probably had it in here, but I haven't included it. Well, that's my bad. If I had it in here, I can send it around to everyone.
It's on the 4th page, I see.
Am I just missing it? Okay.
And
I'll print it out.
The whole packet's printed.
Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, it's just 1 page. Sorry, I was getting confused with the double-sidedness. 4th page is it.
So for anyone who's just catching up now, the basic concern was there were claims or requests for compensation for missing animals from 2023, and there was the committee wasn't clear whether there was sufficient information in the materials provided alongside that request for compensation to to meet all of the statutory requirements, and also just to satisfy the the questions and concerns of the committee adequately to justify compensation for missing animals. And so that the subcommittee has added a cover page to the standard package that requesters for compensation need to submit. And with that, it sounds like we're pretty set for addressing anyone's concerns about missing requests in the future. Is that reasonable? And
Just to make it clearer that this is the information we're looking for and we can help and lay it out, but there it all is.
thing. Yeah, and depending on what happens legislatively, there may not be a missing animals category in the future, but we'll see. where that goes. Probably at least, that category will at least still exist for this year, right?
Yeah, and it will, like, because of the legislative session and when the grant applications are due, it will be the same process for next year, but it could change the year after if the legislature does something, just because the grant applications are due before the legislature would, and the governor would sign it into law. Unless ODA randomly does something. I don't think we're anticipating them doing anything different for next year.
Good. Thank you to the subcommittee for doing that work and ensuring that, you know, we have adequate documentation to you know, support or validate missing claims and fingerprints. Anything more on them? We're just moving right along then. Okay, so item number 4, update on agency partners and county committees meeting that Jen attended.
Yes, and also Emily and Eric were there for the first one we had. So just gonna give just a really quick overview about some work that's being done pertaining to wolf committees in the state, but not specifically pertaining to the business of this Deschutes County Wolf Committee. So there's a working group that has started. It came out of a meeting from a committee member and a livestock owner in Wheeler County who has been really advocating to ODA on behalf of providing better information, a little bit more structured information to wolf committees and helping them through that process. So she invited several of us from different wolf committees or support staff from wolf committees throughout the state, as well as agency representatives. So Aaron was there, Emily was there, and then we had a couple.
IRCS.
And yes, and RCS was there. So there were several representatives of state agencies. ODA was not there. But we had a 1-day meeting that I thought was really informative. Aaron gave an hour or two talk on, or just led a discussion on preventative measures and how to use those, and actually brought those out to show. And then it was really kind of a brainstorming activity on how to develop, or kind of what are we missing in support to wolf committees, and how can we advocate to get some maybe more uniform materials or more additional information to wolf committees for those who are new, like Deschutes counties, those who are merging, like Jefferson County, and draw on kind of the intelligence and history of those wolf committees that have been up and running for many years, and how do we pool all that information together so that there's not somebody like myself or like Harmon Oaks who's kind of just trying to chase this information down and then present it the best as possible to the wolf committee members, and then you guys trying to make a decision on that, but try to have it a little bit more uniform. So since that time, we've had a second meeting. I think that was just really between county, either county committee members, county staff, and ODA to really go towards the next step forward. So I think we've agreed to now meet every other month. And there's a small group of us with great support from our agency partners and trying to make kind of like a toolbox going forward. I'm guessing this is going to be a process. We'll be lucky to have stuff come out of it in a year, but really trying to advocate to ODA on kind of what our needs are, what we've been missing, and how do we best support committee staff going forward. So it's just a work in progress, nothing very specific to update on, but just wanted to let you guys know that work was being done. One of the things we're advocating for, and we'll see if it happens within the next year, maybe 2 years, is a once-a-year workshop where wolf committee members can come together, agency staff can come together, and we can share collective knowledge and experiences of what's going on and what's working in certain areas, geographical areas, and that sort of thing. So all a work in progress, but we'll keep you posted, and I'll let you guys also speak if you want to add anything else to what you took away out of our meeting at Carmen's Ranch.
This is a good thing, especially with turnover in committees, when you have people that step away from being on a committee and you get someone new. We hope to just generate, or have ODA generate, some tangible material that the new committee member can read through and understand what their role is. Good idea. Just make it more streamlined, more uniform.
Go ahead.
A question, okay, so the committees are kind of by county, as I understand it. What about the Warm Springs? Is there a committee for the reservation? Are they subject to the same
They get a federal grant for livestock compensation, and so
Okay.
they don't depend on ODA or ODFW being involved. So I have a professional working relationship with Warm Springs, and they bring me out as help as a consultant, but all of the monies are coming through a federal grant, so they're not a part of this process.
I mean, is that Sarah Lee,
Oh, thank you.
is that kind of like a separate pot of funds from? I know that the feds contribute a certain amount to the state program, our state pool. And this committee is responsible for distributing. Those are two separate.
My understanding, and Emily can jump in, is that it's different. They requested this specifically, and we have other reservations and tribes in Oregon that have opted to depend on counties. And so it's really up to each sovereign nation to decide how they're gonna do it. And Warm Springs had them, maybe in the future, they'll opt into doing the ODA county thing, but right now it's federal because they've got federal money. Where that money is coming from specifically, I don't know.
I mean, it all comes from the same place, but if I had to guess, there are just separate agreements in place for what Warm Springs has versus what the federal government has with the state of Oregon. I can find out if you like. Okay.
Any other questions?
What about, are there other federal, exceptions on other federal lands such as, say, a national monument? Or a wilderness area?
For getting compensated.
Yes,
So compensation can be given to a producer or livestock owner if their livestock is in a place where it's legally allowed to be.
so if there's an allotment within a Forest Service or BLM, or even if it might be, have other overlays on it, it still falls within that jurisdiction.
Yes,
Got it?
so it's, January and the cows are supposed to be brought in October and some are left out there and they get eaten or something like that. Compensation would be not technically available for that.
Okay.
One question I have about this state working group coming together. I mean, I know that in the area where wolves are still federally listed, the management is significantly different from the areas where wolves aren't federally listed anymore. Is that, but that may or may not show up in the kind of the scope of things that these committees are addressing. And so I was just wondering that is, I would think that the needs would be different, east of 395 versus west of 395, but maybe in terms of the scope of committee work, it's not that different, or.
I would say it's not that different. The biggest limiting factor here is that anywhere west of 395, lethal removal is not an option, and that's the only thing. The expectation of preventative measures would be the same across the state, no matter the county.
And we have representatives in our working group that are east of 395. And actually provide a lot of knowledgeable information there because of this, unfortunately, of the.
Longer track.
Yeah, a lot more experience in preventative.
Yeah, it doesn't change the committee structure very much. In Grant County and Harding County, some of these counties that are divided where you have half and half. It's still all the same conversation, so.
Good.
It just adds a facet of complexity to some of the things, that's all.
Sure. Any more questions on item number 4? Hey. Well, item number 5 is an update from ODFW and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on wolf activity in and around Deschutes County.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'll make this brief. There's some new faces here, and usually I have found that it's fatal to assume that your audience knows anything about wolf biology. Wolves are such a loaded species, such a controversial topic that sometimes people assume that they know a lot about wolves, whether they like them or dislike them. But the reality is in the middle. So I'm gonna just quickly graze over some facts about their biology. We're talking specifically in this county about resident wolves. So wolves are a territorial species. Oftentimes we get lazy with the term territorial and we describe deer or elk or even bears as having a territory. They don't technically. All of those animals might have home ranges. But wolves are a territorial species. So we have two groups of wolves that are residential in Deschutes County. They're both actually right on the boundary of Deschutes County. You've got the Metolius pair, which is on the Deschutes and Jefferson County lines. Then to the south, you've got the Upper Deschutes pack, which is on the Klamath County and Deschutes County boundary lines. So these are trans-boundary packs. Neither are exclusive in Deschutes County. And then of course, wolves have this incredible ability to eventually reach sexual maturity and disperse. They leave their family pack that they were born into, and they can wander on the landscape for thousands of miles, literally within a calendar year, looking for a mate, an opportunity to find a breeding partner, and then set up its own family group. And we do occasionally have dispersing wolves moving across the Deschutes County landscape. But regarding the two residential packs, those are the ones that we have the most information to share specifically about them. The Upper Deschutes pack is, I've radio collared them currently. That wolf that is radio collared dispersed out of that pack, so we're trying to get another collar on that pack. They spend a lot of their time in Klamath County, but it's worth knowing that they do, especially in the wintertime, follow the elk up into the southern part of Deschutes County there. There's not a lot of livestock in that part of the county. The livestock operation that is down there is in Klamath County. Not really relevant to this committee, what we're talking about. The pack has not been confirmed to have depredated on any livestock. Again, it's beneficial that there's a lot of elk in that area. And the cattle operation down there is relatively small and well managed. They remove their livestock off of the landscape for 6 months of the year. So that pack has 5 adults. So that would be a male and female breeding pair. So that's the mom and the dad. Then they've got 3 yearlings that will reach sexual maturity next February. So they could disperse. Any one of those could disperse at any given time. We see an uptick in dispersal towards the breeding season. So in the beginning of winter or in the fall, but they could disperse at any time. The numbers fluctuate. The pack is also whelped. They would have given birth to a litter of pups in the middle of April. At this time, they're just being weaned, and the pups will remain highly dependent upon their family group until the middle to the late end of autumn.
Is that in addition to the 5?
Yes, in addition to the 5. So typically we see about 5 or 6 pups born. Usually only about 2 of them will survive to the end of the calendar year. That's just because it's tough being a baby animal out in nature. Yeah, so that's the Upper Deschutes pack. Again, primarily we monitor them, and you can see we have an area of known wolf activity that is on our map that we made for the compensation committees for 2023, and it's just, again, right there at the tail end of Deschutes County. And then to the north, we have the Metolius pair. This is their 3rd breeding season that we have been monitoring them. They are right on the county line between Deschutes County and Jefferson County. It's a breeding pair. So far, they have not successfully reproduced, meaning that there have been no pups that have survived to the end of the calendar year while they've been out here. That could be for a variety of reasons. The first year, perhaps the breeding female wasn't sexually mature, or as a new mom, she just lost her pups. It's also really difficult for just a pair of wolves to successfully raise offspring, because when the female whelps and she's in the den, she'll stay in the den for a week or even 2 weeks, and it's up to the male to bring home food and regurgitate it to her. If he doesn't bring home enough, then her bags dry up and the pups starve in the den. So in any case, we did not see any pups survive to the end of the calendar year last year. And this year, we're still monitoring them. I will tell you right now that they're the most challenging wolf group that I deal with in all of Oregon. And that is because of the unique landscape that Deschutes County has. We're starting to get into a lot of private lands, and as a wildlife biologist who tracks wolves and traps wolves for a living, it's difficult to navigate a mosaic of private lands. And a lot of those private lands are huge, tens of thousands of acres. And if I don't have access to those lands, it's difficult for me to continually track them and then trap and radio color them. Nevertheless, it's an ongoing effort. I have great working relations with a lot of the producers where these wolves frequent. Specifically, the producer who was impacted in Deschutes County last year, I worked very closely with his cowboy and himself, and have a great working relationship in discussing preventative measures and tools and proactive means that they could initiate and have been initiating since their conflict over a year ago. It was 13 months ago. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. Everything north of there is specifically in Jefferson County. Occasionally the Warm Springs wolves come off of the reservation and come down, but again, that's mostly Jefferson County. So I'm just gonna be specific to Deschutes County. And it's not uncommon for us to find evidence of a dispersing wolf at any time of year, or reports of a wolf crossing, any other part of Deschutes County. So those are our resident packs. No, it's not.
And one of the reasons I was really excited to have you come and touch base with us and give us an update is, it's very helpful for this committee who's, focused on compensation for losses and prevention, to have a sense of what the possibilities are of the, what the possibilities of depredation are. And well, to have a sense of what the possibilities of depredation are, so we need to be prepared to kind of outreach to people who need compensation, or to try to work with people who, on prevention efforts. I mean, you have, based on what you know of wolf activity within the county, do you have any thoughts for us on where we should be keeping an eye on, or what problems might be arising in the next year, or where prevention efforts would be really strategic or helpful?
Yeah, I like that you brought up the preventative measures, because it's so much easier to be proactive than reactive. And a lot of people, unfortunately, even in committees all across Oregon, don't realize that the compensation is not just depredation compensation. It's compensation for the extra mile or the proactive measures that are put in place in order to keep conflicts from happening. And that's kind of the drum that I really like to beat, is it's good to stay ahead of the game. Wolves are just like any other animal. They can become habituated. And so if you have an operation that is experiencing recurring conflicts. I mean, wolves are dogs, and it's like giving the dog a reward, and so you want to make sure that you try and nip all of those opportunities in the bud before we get to that point. This is a challenge, especially, you know, in Deschutes County, where you have so many smaller operations, you know, hobby horse farms, etc. There's more people, right? And more private or smaller holdings of stock, whatever that stock might be. And so to try and get the message out that there's compensation available for people who want to try and be proactive is very important. And in that same note too, compensation is available for when the conflicts do occur, and that's why we're here. The money is available. You were gonna ask something.
Yeah, Aaron, we talked about this last time we had a meeting too, but I think sitting in this chair, trying to figure out, you know, who to compensate and for what kinds of occurrences. And trying to, well, for example, the one incident that we've compensated for, when you go back, you know, not knowing that much about it, I've had to familiarize myself with that whole area. So I've done I spent some time out there driving around, looking at it, looking at maps, trying to figure it out. And Ashanti Samuels states that his grazing is in Deschutes County, Jefferson County, and the Warm Springs Reservation on over 100,000 acres. So let's say 6 cows go missing, which I think is the case. You know, what county did they go missing in? Or was it on the reservation? Or does he really have grazing allotments for 100,000 acres? I mean, what is, and you said it's a checkerboard of private land too. I know there's some large holdings in there, at least one that's over 30,000 acres. So how do we, sitting here, try to make a decision on 6 cows have gone missing, but which county was it?
Yeah.
Or was it on the reservation, or was it on private land, or, you know?
Right.
It puts it in a very difficult, I mean, you can spend a lot of money on preventive measures, but, you know, to what avail? What are we really accomplishing if it's 100,000 acres? And, you know, are there controls?
I think I get what you're saying. So just so everyone is on the same page, and this was not the question that was asked, but compensation or the responsibility of compensation falls to the county where the animal was injured or killed. And that's just to clarify so that everyone understands that, because we have multiple producers that operate in multiple counties. And the rule is it's where the animal was attacked or injured or killed. That's the county that has to foot the bill for the compensation. So to ask the question of, well, how do we know if he's operating, and any individuals operating in multiple counties, how do we know which county should be footing the bill for missing livestock?
Right.
And this is the challenge with missing livestock that a lot of people, including the legislature, understands, which is why there's been a push and a lot of discussion about moving away from missing livestock and incorporating a multiplier, which would just cover the cost of assumed missing livestock or any kind of indirect impacts to your livestock operation, regardless of predation. But that does fall under the responsibility of the producer. They have to have good enough records to know where their livestock is. And you keep track, or you're supposed to keep track of how many animals you're putting out on your allotment and how many you're bringing back at the end of the season. And so it would be up to the producer to have records of, hey, I put out X amount of animals and I only brought this many back. It was on this allotment. It was here in this area. And if we get into the nitpicky of an allotment is in 2 different counties, then we just might have to make a unique case and sit down and kind of negotiate between the counties, and figure out what's the most practical thing to do. We don't wanna, I mean, this is Oregon Department of Agriculture's program, it's not Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's program. ODFW is responsible for being the one that conducts the investigation. And ODA is also great, we're not trying to burn anyone, so, I mean, there's not gonna be a loophole, right? If it happens to be an allotment that's in 2 different counties. And the producer does not know for the life of them which county the animals went missing in. We'll cross that bridge when we get there and we'll figure it out, it'll be okay. Yeah.
And I think that's what our subcommittee with Steve and Ethan and myself were determining. We just went with ODA on their sort of list of requirements. But we want, as committee members, want to see those from the producer for missing. Was a brand inspector out there at the time of release onto the allotments, or another witness? Or the producer's own records. So this is what I think we inserted, that our committee here wants to see those records.
Yeah, and that is required because animals die, right? I mean, I grew up around livestock, you put stuff out in the forest. And then you go out and you monitor it occasionally and you bring it back, things die. And so you always are gonna have some X number of loss. But what the record keeping shows is you have to indicate that now that you have wolves in the area, as determined by an AQUA, area of known wolf activity, you have significantly more losses this year than in years past. So it is, yeah, it falls on the shoulders of the producers to have good enough record keeping to show change over years.
You want to read the comment?
Yeah, so I'm seeing that Ethan had a question 10 minutes ago. And
Yeah,
then-
sorry, I didn't have the chat pulled up.
So we'll make sure to get to that, and then also Sarah Lee says Ashanti and his Cowboys have put record keeping in place and are in close contact with him.
Yes, they're doing a fantastic job, and I, you know, trying to be respectful of the privacy of the individuals that we're talking about here, but this is one of the big challenges of someone like this operation. They've got thousands and thousands of acres. How do you protect your livestock? Well, they're doing the right thing, specifically on this property or this operation. Having a range rider or a cowboy or someone who is shepherding your livestock is, I mean, that's why shepherds were invented thousands of years ago. You know, it really does help make a difference if you've got a shepherd or a cowboy, whatever you want to call them, a range rider. If you've got someone out there with your stock, monitoring your stock, and you begin to understand, you know, this animal's sick and died versus this animal was killed and died. All of that makes a world of difference. And yeah, they're doing a good job out there now. So.
Oops, sorry, I missed that. Was that for me?
That was you.
Oh, yeah, my apologies.
No worries.
Couple of things. Number one, Aaron, thanks for being the man on the ground. We really do take everything that you and your team tell us as kind of gospel. You're kind of the folks that are, sorry, I've just had a kid fall on his head. You're kind of our truth sayer. So I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you.
First and foremost. And then my question is, I run about 700 sheep or so east side of Bend, and there was a bunch of, sorry, kids making noises. I heard that, and this is gossip, obviously, that a wolf had walked through the area, and I was wondering, is there any kind of warning system? Apparently it was a collared wolf, and I was told by multiple people, but I didn't know about it. And I was wondering if there was any kind of, I don't know, warning signs or some kind of reporting or something like that that happens from ODFW, or is there like can I call up anyone online and just kind of ask questions if there's anything in the area, or can I get on a list of contacts or something?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ethan, and it's a very challenging one. In a nutshell, kind of, there is, the best thing to do is make yourself known to us, and I know that puts a lot of responsibility on the producer, but we are as transparent as we possibly can be. We just don't have everyone on speed dial. We don't have everyone's phone number, and we can't text everyone. Every time an animal moves on the landscape, for practical reasons, and also just to understand that these animals are out there, and we have more non-collared wolves than we have collared wolves, and we don't want to build up the false sense of security. That, hey, you know, we're telling you where we've got a collared wolf, but I can't tell you where the not collared wolf is at any given time. But if you or anyone else who is a part of this meeting or tuning in, wants to contact us and talk about, you know, maybe getting some more up-to-date information on wolf activity in your area, you can get a hold of me, or you can call our Bend office, our district biologist there. I mean, the secretary or the people at the front desk who answer the phone will be able to direct you to us specifically. There's an important thing to understand about collars is their limitation, the limitation of the technology. These are not live feed GPS collars. I don't pull up on my phone and see where a wolf is at any given time. These collars usually give us 2 points in a 24-hour period that tells us where the wolf was, not where it is or where it's going. So again, it's just important to have that realization that the transparency is there. The technology isn't what a lot of people assume it is. It's not a live feed. It's not, like I said, a continuous feed. And the reason for that is battery life limitations. People, you know, ask, well, we can do it with our cell phones, and I have to remind them that we plug in our cell phones every night when we go to bed, and these collars have to last a couple of years at least, out in the field on these animals. Yeah, that's the long answer of it. Is we're definitely willing to provide any information that we have. It's just, you know, let's not build a false sense of security and assume that we always have the information, I guess. So.
Aaron, when dispersing wolves come through Deschutes County, do they take kind of common routes, or are they just anywhere across the landscape? Because I mean, if they come through common routes, then there might be people near those routes who might be interested in knowing about those. I mean,
I think a lot of people on those common routes are fairly aware that wolves use the same kind of dispersal corridors.
Yeah,
already know.
I mean, wolves are
Some,
not.
yeah.
Wolves are not mountain lions. I have this hypothesis that one of the reasons why they're so socially contentious is because they're conspicuous on the landscape, and they always have been, unlike your mountain lions and your large cats, which are more solitary and secretive. So the people, and I mean, I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth here by saying this, because I'm sure I'll omit some people. But a lot of the people who frequently are encountering the wolves, we are already engaged with, and we're talking to them. Which is a nice thing to say, because if you haven't seen sign of wolves and you're not a part of the conversations, you're probably not in one of the areas that they frequent. Wolves are, as a rule of thumb, not a solid rule, but as a rule of thumb, they are leery of people. So the higher concentrated your human centers are, whether it's even rural, semi-urban areas, it becomes less likely that you're going to be seeing wolves and having conflicts in those areas. It's generally the larger operations who have access to lots of public land at the edge of their doorstep. Those are the ones that typically see where the wolves are. The Metolius pair specifically uses a lot of the national grasslands area, as well as the adjacent Forest Service up on the Green Ridge area. The Upper Deschutes wolves also use a lot of Forest Service area. They follow elk, that's their primary prey. 80 to 90% of their diet is elk. So yeah, if you're in more of an urban area and, again, I hate to say this, but if you're more of an urban area and your neighbors start talking about a pack of 6 or 7 wolves that are hanging out under the street lights at night, they're probably coyotes. And we do get quite a lot of reports and photographs of people who are convinced that coyotes are wolves. And despite my profession and my scholarship in wolf biology, they don't believe me when I tell them it's a coyote. So yeah, it's important to be well informed, and going back to Ethan's comments, we want to inform anyone who is concerned or has information that they think we don't have as well. We want this to be a working relationship, so feel free to reach out to us.
Just before you jump in there, Gordon, sorry. Thanks, Aaron. Yep, I agree completely. It was pure gossip, and I know that I'm not in a wolf habitat zone in essence. I suppose my only real reason for bringing it up was I kind of felt like I was the last one to know.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out, and we run guardian dogs, we run electric netting. I'm not worried about it. Like we have prevention measures in place, and it's not a real concern to me. I just thought, oh, am I missing something in terms of communication streams or something like that? That was kind of it.
No, one last thing I'll say, because this is something that gets brought up a lot, is, can we have like a website or something, a link that alerts everyone where basically you can see where your collared wolves are, and that is not an option. All of our collared wildlife, whether they're wolves or elk or deer or beavers, we hold that information. It's sensitive information for good reason, because people shoot animals when they get a chance to, and whether it's a wolf or a deer or an elk. And so we try and monitor that information and protect it. If we're publicly sharing where your wolf is at, constantly, I guarantee you that your wolf is not going to last a week. Someone will shoot it.
Aaron, I'm sure aware there's been a sort of a back and forth in the Nugget newspaper thing going on about wolves fairly recently. And then I heard anecdotally the other day, as part of this whole I think hysteria almost, that there were 4 deer killed out near there's a guy that has a place, I think I'd say near Geneva, or the former Geneva. And also that a wolf was trying to pull an animal through a fence in that area. Have you heard either of those?
I haven't. I'm not all knowing. I'm not going to pretend to be all knowing. I have not heard about that. No one's reported anything like that.
Okay. I don't know if it's true or not, but there again, it's we've got this thing going on in the Nugget newspaper back and forth, and I think you're aware of it, but it came from the the sort of the, I don't know if some of the information is just hysteria, or like you say, could be coyotes, probably more than likely, but who knows? And I don't know how much truth there is to it.
Yeah, I don't.
No reports of depredation though recently. No.
Yeah, I'm not all knowing, and I'm sure that people know their backyards a lot better than I do. And so if they see something and keep it quiet, then I'm not gonna hear about it. I don't see that kind of behavior.
Did you hear that, Donna? Did you hear that rumor?
Yes.
The 4 deer being killed and all that?
That came to our wolf welcome committee
Yeah, did it? Yeah,
from an outside person.
yeah. Not confirmed then, yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
So before we move to the next topic, are there any final questions?
Just one question. Just the one question. I recall last year, you said that the average lifespan is 3 to 4 years. Is that, if I remember correctly?
2 to 4 years. Yeah.
2 to 4, and I just think about the Notorious pack. You said it's been 3 years now, and they haven't bred. So
Yeah, you want my biological speculation on what's next?
I'm just curious, because there's only one pair up there, so there's not a lot.
Right, so wolves reach sexual maturity at 22 months, so approximately 2 years. So assuming that the male and the female are the same age, I mean, it's their third breeding season, they're probably 5, so they're over the hill now. They're over the hill. And wolves can live up to 12 years, but their odds of successfully doing anything, whether it's making babies or bringing down food, decrease. I mean, I've got a 7-year-old German Shepherd that's already crippled from arthritis. You can imagine being a wolf and your teeth getting chipped and running all the time, and you become arthritic as well. So, yes, these wolves are, without handling them, I'm assuming that they're 4 or 5 at least years old, and it's possible that they could just dissolve, especially if one of them dies. Yeah, your Metolius pair is gone, and that territory is now vacant. And how long it will take for wolves to come and fill that niche, that little habitat zone, it's my guess is as good as your guess, and vice versa. So
If you have a discussion about some missing livestock, do you generate a report at all or anything like that?
if a producer talks to me about it, we do. Usually, I mean, it's not ODFW that compensates though, so we really give them the forms that they need from Oregon Department of Agriculture to be compensated. We can't verify what is not there, right? And so it's more of a professional working relationship, advising them to go to the committees and go to ODA, so.
Do you have any specific recommendations for how we can reach out to the limited producers that are there either south or north? And
I wish there was a better way, so I don't have a good answer. I don't have a great idea. But it has been effective to communicate with the people who are obviously in need of it, the ones that are telling us that they've got problems, the ones that we're talking to. And then we encourage them to communicate with their neighbors as well. So that word of mouth thing seems to really be effective. And I'll tell you what, a lot of those people, not just in this county, but all across the board, no matter what state you're in, there's a lot of people who just want to be private, you know, they don't want drama. And so it's usually, we talk to them on the back 40 and might never hear from them again, or you might, because they might have questions for you, but they don't want to be in the social scene or in the limelight. Again, I wish I knew everyone because I like people, but I don't know everyone, but I'm pretty good at communicating to the ones that do know. Sure, I'm missing someone. Sure, someone here knows of someone who is frustrated at me because I haven't contacted them. So I try to do a good job.
you can offer that we can help them,
Yeah.
whatever's needed. The problem is it ends up being very public. To us.
Yeah, I glanced at your agenda. Was that something that we're gonna talk about?
Very next agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I could ask one question.
Go ahead, you're okay.
Just to go back to, being able to anticipate where where there might be problems and doing what we can to head those off. Do you have any kind of analysis for us on why the Metolius pair was, had so much depredation activity last year? And this year, so far, we haven't really heard.
Yeah.
Unless there's a bunch of stuff happening in Jefferson County.
I mean, I can speculate. I think that there wasn't a lot last year. There's 2 confirmed incidences that got confirmed, right? We got called out, we went out, we confirmed them. And those both happened back to back. And the producer was great. And we worked with the producer. We've been in contact with the producer. We made recommendations. The producer took the initiative. And it's been over a year and we haven't had any conflicts. And so I think that I mean, I consider all of that a success. You had two incidences that were really close. I mean, within like a week, maybe 2 weeks of one another. And that's what it is. Wolves are fascinating for so many reasons. One of the things that is most fascinating is their limitations as predators, which a lot of people don't realize or want to believe in, but they're not the best hunters compared to lions, compared to bears. They're tenacious though, and they have to find prey that is somehow compromised. And that could just be the landscape, the topography, the body condition of their prey. And then they exploit that to their advantage. And if you as a producer can get in the mind of a wolf and you can say, okay, my livestock are vulnerable in this way at this time of year, I'm gonna take 1 or 2 extra steps to just protect them when they're at their most vulnerable, you usually can deter those wolves pretty quickly. And that's exactly what was done with this case in Jefferson County. So
That's good news.
it is good news. You don't want the conflicts, but if you get the conflict and you're willing to think proactively about it, you're usually able to nip it in the bud. You just don't want to get there in the first place. Preferably, you'd rather not ever have.
That's a hopeful note for our efforts to promote prevention.
Yes, and one last thing I'll say though is inevitably someone will get hit who has not been a part of this conversation. They're 2 years behind. And when a depredation happens to someone like that and they were completely oblivious to wolves or anything on the landscape, they get very emotional and they get very upset, and that's completely reasonable. So you have to just hold their hand and help them understand that there's a team and a program ready to help them out.
Those kind of relationship things, and that's a really good segue to our next topic, mitigating political impact on producers and ranchers. Jen,
Do you want me to lead off or do you want to lead off? I can
happy
lead
to
off.
let you lead.
So this topic came along because I was contacted by an agency expressing concern on behalf of some producers and livestock owners who realized that in Deschutes County in particular, but in some other counties, but Deschutes County, that this wolf depredation and wolf committee in general can be highly politicized, and by putting a lot of contact information out there about producers' first and last name, their ranch name, their address, that they can kind of get caught in the crosshairs of 2 different political sides, and that it may impact their ability to work with committees when their names are brought up in the newspapers or brought up in committee meetings, and they're getting heat from both sides of the issue, and then it's beginning to impact their businesses. So just wanted to bring this to the attention that I got that phone call, and wanted to bring it to the committee's attention on whether or not you want to move forward with considering potentially redacting some sensitive information in wolf applications, grant applications that are before us, with the idea of the committee goal being to mitigate conflict and making sure that the work being done in the committee goes towards mitigating conflict versus instigating a political conflict with that rancher producer. So just wanted to put that out there, then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Chang if you want to add any additional background or information to that. I can also talk about, I did talk with our legal counsel first on what we could and couldn't do. They're comfortable with some form of redaction to minimize the amount of personal information put out on applications. This is done with other things, with other public records for the county. We redact personal information sometimes to mitigate, direct contact for that person. So that is within the realm of what can happen with the committee. But it is up to the committee on what they want to do. I'll also see if Nick, our county administrator who joined our meeting, if he wants to add any other background information to that or other consideration. Okay, so we'll turn it over to the committee to discuss.
Yeah, the one other thing I would add is just, if you watch the news or you track media, I mean, wolves are a very hot, national political topic right now. And, across the western United States, in, eastern and central Oregon, and, it's, certainly, producers could get caught in the middle of, all kinds of political drama. I have concerns that our committee will get caught in the middle of all kinds of, local political drama, so, just trying to think about how, how we do the good work, of reducing conflict, how, how producers can, access the support of the committee, in doing the good work of doing good prevention work, and, staying out of the hot seat, and, being used as essentially various parties might be trying to use both the committee and producers as pawns in larger political games. So it's helpful for us as a committee to think about that as an issue and think about how we want to approach it, or kind of keep our head down, or what we want to do. I'd welcome any thoughts from anyone on the committee or anyone else.
Can you, excuse me, can you look up like the ODA applications for the grant money? Is that public?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't believe that's public. For sure, the ODF and W reports are not public.
Right.
So I have not been able to, I tried to see if I could look it up, and I've not been able to find any of the ODA reports. The reports that they put out on what they do generate reports on grant funding on a yearly basis, but it does not give specifics. They give it to the county, and then the county disperses those funds. So when ODA gives us grant funds, we may apply for X, Y, and Z grant funds. They give it back to us and say, these are grant funds for depredation, these are grant funds for missing, these are grant funds for preventative measures. But they don't specifically say you need to pay X producer this amount of money.
Right.
And additionally, with ODA, if you apply for preventative measures for strobe lights and then you use it for range writing, that's fine. You can just, you would just put that in your end of year report on, these are the funds we've received and this is how we spent it, but there's not strict parameters on, once we grant you that money, that's how you have to use it. So it's not given down even in the grant. We have once they give us the grant, we have a grant agreement with them, and it's not specifically, it doesn't specifically mention, the producer doesn't specifically mention where those funds need to go to. It just said you've been granted funds for this pool, for this pool, and for this pool.
And then they, like when we give the funds, there does have to be a name attached to those funds, like on our side of things, correct?
So internally, what happens is, and what's happened for our last grant funds is I produce an internal document. It's a grant agreement between the county and the recipient of those grant funds. They sign it, and then they say they're also going to provide X information to us at the end of the year to help compile our grant report.
Okay.
So yeah, there's that.
Oh, yeah, okay, so their name does have to be on, so I was just wondering how.
Their name is on the internal grant agreement between the county and that recipient of the grant fund. So we'll be,
Is that public?
if there's a public records request, it can be public.
Okay.
It's not something that it's not something that I would, unless you guys specifically ask for it, it's not something I would do in the grant packet. Like I have grant agreements already and I haven't put them in the grant packet. They haven't been executed, but it's, it's just kind of the way the county does financially, has a record keeping of the finances within the county. So that happens for any finances that go through the county or come back to the county. So we have an agreement with ODA as well. Yeah.
And then, if any information is in our meeting materials or is gonna be posted on the web page for the committee, that's when we have the opportunity to redact.
That's correct. So right now on our webpage, and two different places on the county website is this agenda packet, the entire packet. It's already published. So any meeting materials for this meeting that the committee considers is public. This is where legal counsel said it's up to the committee before I, if you guys want to set a standard of what information wants to be redacted, I would then go back to legal counsel to make sure that that's what falls within the lines of what can be redacted. But then I would redact that before I put it in the committee application. So we would still have, let's say the committee decides to redact some personal information of a grant application. I would redact that, but still put that grant application with the redactions into the meeting packet that you guys all get before the meeting and that goes public before the meeting. So they've all been on our website for 2 or 3 weeks now too. Yeah.
What if the producer's names and the ranch names are redacted? For example, they're included in this packet in one spot anyway. I mean, going forward, that'd be a simple thing to do.
Yeah, so that's a consideration, I think, before the committee on that.
I think it'd be reasonable to redact personal information from the application but knowing that we have to, we have to apply and have a name attached at one point.
That there's a submission of information that has to include the personal information, but then the stuff that we. The meeting materials we send out, the website, those can be places where the information is redacted.
Personal
And then-
information being name, address.
Business name.
Business
Business
name.
name. But I can see where certain situations, we would need information from Aaron, for example, on his investigation and where the allotment is and how many acres it is and where he thinks something might have occurred. We need to get that information in order to be able to look at it and figure it out.
I mean, as a committee member, it's kind of nice to know a little bit of specifics. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to visualize, like, picture things, imagine things, if you don't have any information. It's I don't know exactly how we strike that balance, but
Well, I was gonna say, once we put it into our meeting notes, couldn't we do the redaction? Is that what you're thinking?
yeah,
Jen?
but I mean, also these meetings are recorded. So if we're talking, if we're naming names
Yeah.
and like pointing to specific places, I don't have a good idea of how we deal with that. I mean, we could start, we could call people like Rancher B or give people kind of the generic labels but.
And I think we would go back to the quorum rules there too, that committee members, even off the record, this is all on the record, right? But off the record, you can't discuss committee business if you have a quorum of people. And so at any point in time, one of the considerations is how much information does the committee members need to know? Anything that's, I would say, if you're gonna redact an application, but then talk about that name in the meeting, that there's not necessarily a reason to redact that information from the application in general, because these meetings are public, they're publicly broadcast right now, anyone could be joining our Zoom meeting, and they're publicly recorded and then put on our website, as they should be for public meetings. So it's really consideration on whether the committee members feel comfortable not knowing that personal information, and whatever that redaction is at any point in time.
Could be like more of an option of the, like the person that had the. If they didn't want their name in, they could be Rancher B and they could be Ranch B, Rancher B, I don't know.
We do that in Harney County
Really?
with our sage grouse agreements. They're all coded, so we get the agreements. We don't know who or where this happened, but we have a good enough description of what the agreement is, what they're committing to, that's how we structured the programmatic agreements with all of these private landowners in Hardin County.
Right. I
So
mean,
do you have like a general idea of where they are, or like no idea where in Kearney County?
Broadly, yeah, so.
I mean, other than knowing that they have depredation, I mean, we really need to know their name. I mean, does that matter?
Not only would be taken into consideration if the committee is trying to figure out if the money requested for proactive tools is being spent wisely, the only issue that I can think of, but I'm not. I guess I trust people, and I feel like if we're doing a compensation, or excuse me, if I'm doing a depredation investigation. Or one of the biologists is, we're gonna talk with them about what options they might want to pursue, just as, you know, an advisor, they can listen to us or not listen to us. And then they can take what we say and maybe write up a letter of what they hope to get out of the committee. You can review it in good faith and hope that it works out for the best.
And just to piggyback that on a bit, in the grant agreement, they are agreeing to provide us the information on how they very specifically use those funds. So there is a level of accountability on the back end too. And I guess at any point in time, if somebody wasn't being, if the committee felt somebody wasn't being judicial with those funds, the redaction could be retracted, or, you know, there's a variety of ways you can come at this, right? But like, in a variety of what you want redacted, if anything, but and what part of the process you want redaction, if anything, but you know, if you're not getting what you need out of that recipient, they have, you know, they have a binding obligation to provide information on how they spent those funds to make sure it's within the parameter of the program. So if that's not being done, if you know, or if the information's not matching up, then the committee can move forward with other decisions there.
And yet there's. Where the county's not allowed to send unredacted information just to committee members.
Individually? I would have to ask, I don't know if Nick knows that, I'm not sure if Nick heard that question. Commissioner Chang asked if like I or somebody from the county could send individually out to the committee members unredacted information, so that all the committee members are getting it, but not together in a quorum.
And when we're talking about the meeting, that would just be,
You know, you get the unredacted information and then that person becomes rancher B. That's it.
I mean, I would check with legal counsel unless Nick has it.
Yeah, let's check with legal counsel.
Yeah.
To find out what the best path is.
But I understand what you're looking for.
that's kind of what
You know,
I'm wondering too, yeah.
You know, we are, you know, there's a certain amount of public accountability associated with this committee, and I would like to know who rancher B is. You know.
I think I agree with Bill. I don't want to necessarily bring up a personal situation, but I have a long-standing relationship with a rancher in Klamath County that is terribly irresponsible, not a believable person. And so, he's had both depredations and leaves carcasses out. You know, he's had all kinds of issues and problems. He's well known. But in that case, you know, if Aaron were to go out, if someone like that, say, had a depredation, and it's legitimate that there's a depredation, but what was the cause of it? And, you know, where the cattle should have been taken in long before they were, or he left cattle out through the winter where, you know, it wasn't really allowed to on a wildlife refuge in this case. So there needs to be, you know, I mean, I think a report can give you a lot of information. And so we have to rely on Aaron. If we don't know the name or the history or reputation of the rancher, there are, you know, I trust people too, for the most part, Aaron. There are people who, you know, are, you know, is not responsible. They're out there. I don't think too many ranchers are, but there's one here and there. So I think that's where it's a fine line. You know, how much information we need. We'd have to rely on you basically to make some of those judgment calls if we don't have the name or the little background. And that gets into a little bit of a dicey thing if you're trying to make judgment calls.
Well, I mean, Aaron's already making judgment calls, right? You know, documented, you document a depredation. Where, you know, you kind of vouch for a claim of a missing animal, and that's a judgment call.
Yeah. Fortunately, we haven't had any of those kinds of situations, but. And I don't think we probably will, because there's just not that many ranchers that are in Deschutes County that are in the path of the wolves right now. It's more in the wildlands urban interface area, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, something that you can always consider too, and I don't know if this is something that needs to be discussed as in depth, but. People can request funds for proactive tools without ever having had a depredation, okay? So people can come to you, and the reason why we have those polygon maps, the areas of known wolf activity. Those maps drive me nuts. I wish I could get rid of them because they're so frustrating. They're not biological representations of where wolves are. It's those are the areas where risk is potential to or could occur. And that reason why we have those is so that the committees can say, hey, this person is requesting funds, but based off of the polygon that we have here, I can see that they don't live within that. And the conflict is perhaps not as likely as it would be for someone who lives within that polygon. And so the committee can then spend money accordingly. You can use your best judgment. So I guess that was kind of a long spiel just to say that people can come to you and ask for funding and compensation without ever having had a wolf attack or kill something. And so
Or interaction with you even.
or any interaction with me.
It's really the depredation is the solid one for the committee with ODF and W.
Yeah,
The missing, they may or they may not. It's not required that they have reached out to you for ODF and
that's
W.
correct. That's correct.
And then preventative, there's no requirements whatsoever. So it would really where Aaron ODF and W would come in is guaranteed in the depredation funding request, right? Otherwise, it's not a legitimate fund request that the committee nor ODA would consider. But the other ones are not necessarily ODF and W. Not that they wouldn't be, they could be, but
Yeah.
there's not.
Yeah, in theory, someone who I've never talked to could come to you and ask for some money to do X, Y, or Z.
Is in our next, our very next.
Like
agenda item.
ultimately, you want people coming to request money
That's the
for
goal.
Right.
preventative stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if they have wolves near them, we're happy to just have people interested in the program.
If I like spending time talking to people in areas where they haven't had problems. Those are the good days. Bad days are the reverse. So.
So I could
Jen is gonna
Yeah.
check out some things for us.
quickly, and then we can bring this back to the next agenda item, or next, sorry, on the agenda for the next meeting, once I've clarified a few things with legal counsel. Okay,
Sound good. Right. On to outreach and education. So, Jen prepared a draft press release.
or PIO, I wanna take that for it.
The county staff prepared a draft press release announcing the grant funding and, but what we're talking about more than just the draft press release.
So this is
More broadly about.
up to the committee, so this started with an idea I had, you know, in these conversations I've been having in these outside committee. Or in these outside meetings, the question I have for every single time is, how are you guys doing outreach? How are other counties reaching their producers? And it's a mishmash of how they're doing it. Some people are doing some outreach, some are not, some are just waiting for a depredation or, you know, some sort of conflict to happen. So it's just a wide variety. Again, this is hopefully something that we're working on streamlining in the future. But I just had this idea because it's what we do for our fire preventative grants. We send out, we have grant funding for doing preventative measures for fire control. And we send out a press release saying, hey, citizens of Deschutes County, this grant funding is available, here's how you apply. And so I'm like, we could do the same thing for this Wolf Committee. You know, we have a pot of funds, about $8,000 right now, not designated anywhere for preventative measures for this upcoming year. Had a lot of conversations with Aaron, Emily, a lot of other people, Emily, Ellie Gage, you know, on how to spend these funds, and there's all sorts of ideas. But really, some preventative measures are quite expensive, some are not, but a lot of them upfront costs are pretty expensive. So I'm not sure it made sense in those discussions that I had for the committee just to kind of figure out a way to spend those funds if there was a producer or rancher out there who wanted to use or tap into those funds. So as an idea, had our PIO draft this press release. And we could put it out there and see if there's any interest from any producers or ranchers that we haven't heard from who are interested in using preventative measures. So that's the basis of this conversation.
That, anyone have suggested edits or amendments to this draft?
Just to confirm, they can only use these if they're within the.
No, it's up to the county's discretion. The aqua is there to be an area where you can prioritize, like the attention should be spent.
Got it.
But it's up to the discretion.
I think the one parameter is if they would have to be used within Deschutes County.
Right.
And then also follow the proper usage, but it's pretty wide ranging ODA has on how they could use it.
I'm assuming there might be a slight blend. People.
It's so, I mean, Aaron might have a better idea of that than I do. I don't know.
Man. I am a little bit concerned that the people who bite this kind of hook are not necessarily the ones that need to bite the hook.
Right.
You might think of a way to put some sidebars on it.
Some people some people just read the news and some people don't. And so some people might be oblivious to it who I would like to have them.
That's why we were talking about, you know, we've spent a lot of time talking about like, what are the channels, the communication channels to get this information out through once we have a communication that we feel good about. And we have a couple of additional thoughts besides just, you know, going through the news. But also, you know, to speak to the side boards and also to connect back to the area of known wolf activity. I mean, maybe we could even specify in here, you know, if you're in an area of known wolf activity and you are seeking preventative funds, you get, you know, bonus points. You know, we will prioritize your application before others or something like that. Yeah, that might help us.
Would it be a better idea to maybe ask you is there anyone else that we should be reaching out to see, like, you're seeing the wolves are kind of frequenting, that maybe, hey, do you guys want any of this stuff? You know, be more specific versus asking that.
Yeah, in spitballing, I like that idea, but it's up to the committee to kind of decide if they want to do that. And I know where the wolves generally frequent, and we can identify on a map specific areas, roads where specific communities are higher at risk than others. Is it, you know, always going to be gold? Like, no, wolves are animals and they do unpredictable things sometimes, but it might be a good way to isolate our efforts.
But you have So the hard thing, right, is to isolate those efforts via press release and we can have a map, but I think what we tried to get after. And what I've asked too in these other committees is like, do we have a list of ranchers and producers in those areas that we could specifically reach out to, like. I don't, from my questions I've asked through a variety of ways, is I'm not sure there's a way to narrow. That outreach unless we do something like. Put this press release, like take out an ad in Central Oregon or Central Oregon Livestock Magazine. Central Oregon Rancher Magazine, like, and that's actually how. What we did for the Wolf Committee to get livestock and rancher owners in there, we targeted an ad specifically there and a couple other places. But I found it was difficult to find a way to limit that outreach, because there's not really a list out there that I know of.
What about county stockers?
Well, didn't we talk last time about livestock producers list, and can you generate something?
Well, I get concerned about privacy issues too, just like you guys have more thought to it. There's an email chain for the Deschutes County Livestock Association. But I don't have permission to give away those emails.
Email is free. If we gave you the communication,
Yeah.
could you send it out through?
I might be able to see what I could do on that for sure.
That is a good avenue. And NRCS might be another good avenue, because they have, they're fairly well connected with local landowners as well as the Soil and Water Conservation District.
Yeah, there might be some other social media posts that we could put out, like, or even a little ad in, like, say, the Capitol Press. For some very specific, for the ruralite, something that's very specific to the ranching community. Both of those are good ways to reach rural people, I think.
Now, if someone applies for this, as a community, we can just say no.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
It would be
like-
a whole consideration, so like, and then lots of next steps, right, but like, are you gonna have an open application period? Do you wanna consider these each committee meeting, or like, do you
Can
want?
they like,
You're saying.
fight our decision?
What's that?
Oh, sorry.
You're saying revolving as opposed to like an application.
Right, so there could be the possibility of next committee meeting, there's 3 people who applied. And they applied for more than $8,000, and so you may think they're all worthy, and then you're, applicable for whatever your standards are, and then more could apply after that. So it opens up a lot of other questions, but right now, there is no outreach effort except for what has been reported in the local news to some extent on the committee, but I'm not sure, and there has been discussion of like grant dollars out there, but no information has been communicated outside of this committee meetings on where do you get the application, how do you apply, what can you use it for, that sort of thing. So this was just one brainstorm in that mix, but it sounds like coming from this is creating a better brainstorm maybe, or a different brainstorm.
I don't know, this, again, still might not be useful, but I guess in my experience, I feel like. Localized information usually seems to be the most beneficial avenue to pursue when it comes to. Wolves on the landscape, it's usually not a whole community, it's usually a neighborhood. And ranchers know their neighbors and they communicate with them. Relatively frequently, and we communicate with them as well, so I know that the net would get very small. And therefore might not be attractive. But I still think kind of word of mouth and taking this flyer to some producers. That we know well and asking them to share it with their neighbors is probably
That
safe.
might be the best way to do it. Direct contact.
That thing also gives you a chance to vet the people. Yes. How do you say if we got 3 applications or people wanting to, say they're just hobby horse ranchers. And they're afraid their horses are gonna get predated or something. How do you vet these people and really know if it's a real concern or just you know.
Yeah, I mean, that,
We do have a horse category.
yeah, it would be up to the county to decide how and who gets vetted, but I do think that. Where we get a lot of the activity, it's on large properties and the neighbors know the neighboring operation. And it's really easy to get them to communicate with, for example. Trapping opportunities, I've already expressed my frustrations at how it's challenging in Deschutes County because of the mosaic of private lands. That said, when I have tried to trap, it's really easy for one neighbor to call 3 of the other neighbors down the road and say, hey, can the biologist have access to your properties? It works out very well. Those are the ones that are, you know, they see wolf sign. They're the ones that have the wolves on their property more regularly.
So if I'm hearing correctly, maybe the committee is considering not making this press release or news release, but making this a flyer. Taking out the media contact in there, putting in a map, and then potentially of the area, knowing that the aqua's on here, so at least there's a visual. And then making it a flyer to distribute to ODFW, US Fish and Wildlife, OSCO Extension, NRCS, and all, and potentially even I could reach out to Central Oregon Rancher Magazine to see if they would put it in as a PSA into their magazine and do a more localized outreach effort via flyer for these organizations to use a lesser
Livestock.
versus a blast press release out there. Is that where I was hearing the direction going? I'm not trying to put words into the
A
mouth.
little bit more, yeah.
And am I remembering correctly, there's. Certain amount of outreach dollar, a certain amount of prevention dollars, but they, you know, there's a portion of that already kind of earmarked for Ranger B. And there's, how much do we have?
About $8,000,
So
yeah.
that's 8,000, I mean, it's not a lot of money.
No,
so-
it's not. I think, somebody mentioned that like 1 mile flattery is
$5,000.
$5,000. It's reusable, but like, so if you look at it like that, once I started hearing the figures of some of these preventative measures. Doesn't go very far, so.
Ultimately, you have, you know, a few miles on hand that, and I'm not quite sure where you would store it. This has been another conversation that the Depredation Committee in Crook has had. But where you store those supplies, keep them on hand so folks can come ask to use them as needed. Flandry is super, and Aaron can talk forever about Flandry, super useful in certain applications. For instance, it's not applicable at all in larger allotments, but for smaller things or having it around your property, it's great. So having that on hand would be useful, and that way you have those supplies, and then you can use funds in future years for other things.
Can we do that?
So this is, we can do that. This is what we discussed at our last little advisory committee that was just counties is. Couple different discussions, but maybe have. My idea, ODA wasn't fond of it, but maybe we can talk them into it, is having them actually have a toolbox of preventative measures like a strobe light, 2 miles of flageolet, a couple other things in there. Some educational resource materials, LA Gages, through her, Western Landowners Alliance has a lot of like great toolboxes for preventative measures, but having that information available in toolbox and that committee members, and then committees each year could just say, we want 2 of those toolboxes. And then ODF&W or US Fish and Wildlife or some other partner agency, this is all not happened yet, but these are ideas in the making, can house those for the county. So then when the county committees get requests, we can go there because these, from what I've learned, these preventative measures don't need to be on a particular ranch year round, right? It's during specific seasons, during specific incidences, if there's illness, sickness in pens, if it's breeding season. I learned all of this from Aaron, so I feel weird talking about it with him sitting here, but that they're not used, that they don't need to be used year round. So it makes sense to almost have a library of these where it can be checked out by agencies or by a rancher producer. We're not there yet. So Klamath County is using, I thought it was ODF&W, but I think LA thinks it's US Fish and Wildlife, but they are doing kind of a program like that where it's housed, the committee goes and purchases it, it's housed with the state agency or the federal agency, and then they go out and use it when they're out there working. So these things, these are all the information that, you know, I'm learning and getting, but we're not at yet for this year gonna be in a place to do that. But maybe by next year, we might get there. We have another meeting in 1 more month, so. But, you know, ODA wasn't necessarily fond of that idea, but I'm not sure that that means it's off the table or something like that.
And they're not fond of it probably because they're wanting the supplies to be tied to a certain individual.
So paraphrasing, and this is just my interpretation of the paraphrase, I want to caveat that. Because I also thought the thing that we should look into is ODA and does that, then ODA goes and bulks buy that, it could be potentially cheaper in the long run if you're bulk buying for a statewide need versus one county needing 1 mile of flagery.
Yeah.
If they bulk buy it, then it actually could drive down the cost, but they would have to own that. And then they came back and said, well, that would be a great thing for Western Landowners Alliance to do. But really, it is an upfront cost, and where those funds lies with ODA and other state programs to do this kind of, it was another grant program I just did, where you could just select one thing and you get all this whole package of things, right? And it's more beneficial because it's cheaper for the state to buy it, cheaper for the county to take it from the state, and then to have kind of a toolbox that's useful because it's not necessarily just one item. So I think it was the very initial conversation. It's one of the many things that we're looking at, but I think something along those lines may make sense, but I'm not sure anyone agrees with that. But I think we could pair with Jefferson and Crook County and Clement County and do something, you know, there's no inhibitions from like pairing with other counties on these programs and these bulk buying things. So I'm not sure how much we, you know, something to look at for next year, but I think with $8,000 left in our funding, there's not a lot of, it won't go that far, with what I've been learning through these experts sitting to the right of me on how much these things actually cost.
Yeah, I mean, it's also already mid-June. The next application cycle is January.
January, February, yeah.
So, I mean, we could just be using these 6 months to do outreach in this targeted way, identify the prevention needs of, you know, a set of livestock producers in a you know, a target area. And you know, what we can't fulfill with $8,000, we ask for more money in January. Right, and we would have a very very substantiated need. And, you know, we talk to these producers, they're concerned, they saw volunteer. We want this, and this, you know, and it's better than when the condition we were in January this year, where it was, well, we know what Rancho B needs, but we don't know what
What
the
anyone else
prevention
brings, yeah.
needs are anywhere else.
That's a very solid point. So this process could provide a lot of information to the committee on what the community who's affected by this may need in the future for next year.
Yeah.
And then just as a reminder, the $8,000 does have to be spent by January 31st, otherwise we lose it. So we could always give it back to Rancher B, who has more expenses than
We could buy our ball of yarn, our
all of
flattery.
flagery, or 1 mile of flagery.
There's, oh, sorry, Emily.
I was just gonna say, consider that sooner rather than later, because I think the lead time on flagery can be quite long in terms of production, because someone's literally sewing flagging onto a poly wire is not something I would wish upon anybody, frankly. ODFW ordered some and they got it in a much shorter time, but I think in general, their lead time is like 20 to 30 weeks.
But we could buy the flattery and expend the funds before the expiration date. Wait another 20.
In my experience with spending money on these kind of things, and just so everyone's aware, we do have flagery on hand. It's always nice to have more in case the day comes when you have to use more, but ODFW has purchased some and each office has some, and we're all friendly, so I can run over to a different district and borrow theirs.
Similarly for us with our Klamath, Roseburg and LeGrand offices.
So we currently have for this county, potentially 3 miles worth of flagery. So that's pretty good. And box lights are a very useful tool. They're about $150, $160 a pop. These are great devices that often resolve most concerns. If there's an issue, the Fox lights are a great way to spend the money. We lend our Fox lights out, and oftentimes, unfortunately, we don't get them back. It's just how it goes. So it's really nice to have a bunch of those on hand. A great tool. So those are the two big tools, I'll emphasize that word. For spending this money. There are other things out there. In fact, coming down the pipe this year, we're gonna have some ear tags, which have been proven effective to deter predation by wolves. That's something next year we could probably reimburse someone for putting out on their livestock.
Flashing ear tags.
Flashing ear tags, yeah. So there's tools, but also, so that's what you can spend your money on if you want to have a library, but very much so, techniques and reimbursing people for their techniques is how I see a lot of this money being spent wisely. For example, you have someone who has very limited bandwidth to get out and check their cows due to their age, perhaps. Some of these operators are aging out, and they might need to hire a summer hand to run around and do something for $12 an hour or something like that. Those techniques really pay in the long run. Just like I mentioned with this producer who had a depredation last year, it was the tools helped, but it was the techniques that I think are really paying off in the long run. And so compensating people for technique changes is something that the money can be spent on and probably will be spent on.
We talked a little bit last time about game cameras, because we have some around our fence where we, we have coyotes that they under all over the wire. I think that would be a good tool too, like.
Yeah, they're helpful. I would be very careful though. A lot of people get excited and can be reimbursed. It's up to you
Right.
on spending it on cell cameras, but that can drain your bucket of funds really quickly. And all that does is prove that wolves were there, or not. It doesn't act as a preventative tool, right? So you put it out there, it gives you a sense of security or anxiety. I don't know how you would interpret the results. And so it's beneficial, but it's not gonna prevent anything from happening.
We're not too far from Rancher Peak.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the reason we haven't really done much. We have cell cameras out because we like to see what's going in and out of the pins, and we haven't really seen anything. We're just a couple months place.
Yeah, exactly.
You said you have woven wire?
Yeah, it's all woven wires. Like a railroad tie fence, the woven wire. There's just every once in a while there's where the coyotes dig under and some kind of go under. Mostly coyotes and bobcats, and then they don't know why.
Yeah, so I'm not saying no. I do think that there's a place for it, but since you brought up fencing, that's also another tool that is great. If you've got a calving pasture that is small enough to be fenced in with woven wire, that's about as wolf-proof as
Awesome.
you can get.
We didn't have to pick bills.
Yeah, I mean, that really is that's a long-term solution to a problem. You've got vulnerable animals in the spring and potentially in the fall, depending on when you're calving. If you've got them in an enclosed area, can't beat that. I mean, that's good. That's a good thing to
Very
spend money on.
lucky, yes.
So, yeah. So again, it's not just the things that people think are gimmicky. Sometimes it's the techniques as well as permanent fencing that can help in that $8,000.
Jan, I liked, I don't know if it was your idea, but I think you mentioned it. Ellie Gage in Cook County, I think she was storing some of these at Soil and Water District, but sharing might be a good idea. I know.
I mean, that's where I got the idea of this, it wasn't my idea, Ellie Gage is doing that for Cook County. I don't think that she's had anyone tap into it yet, but I think they just got them this year, maybe.
She just put in an order for some box lights and stuff.
Yeah.
Everything is being housed at the ODFW office.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, and that's, why not? Throw it those.
And we did put a flat rate this year in Cook County.
Yeah, I put it up Yep, yes, I've got a lot of flat year experience under my belt.
So it is, it's 7:15. We are a little behind schedule on our vacation agenda.
It wasn't big. Oh,
This is a really, I mean, we just had a really good conversation about preventative measures and, you know, how to get the word out about available funds and you know, assessing needs in the future and things like that. So I don't want to cut that off, but did we had some,
The only thing the one thing I recapped what I thought I heard about the changing the news release to a flyer, doing the few changes that I said to that, and then distributing that. So I just want to make sure that's coming from the committee. That's what you want to do, because I can do that in between the next committee meeting and send that out.
Or directed.
Okay, and what I
we-
listed
we-
there
we need like
was
a formal
ODF.
motion, right?
I don't think so, but I had ODF and W, US Fish and Wildlife, NRCS, OSU Extension. And then also contacting Central Oregon Rancher Magazine to see if they'll do it as a PSA. If they wanna charge funds for it, we can discuss at the next meeting if that's something we wanna spend a small, you know, it's gonna be small portion, or you guys.
Central Oregon Ranch Supply, I mean, like, 'cause there's people that probably miss things, but you know, everyone talks, oh yeah, I had wolves in my place, you know, when they go in and. Right, that's why I hear most of my news anymore.
Do you, I mean, do you have, like, could I send you a flyer?
I mean, I can go drop it by and see if they would be. happy
Yeah,
to
okay.
just-
Once I have the finalized flyer, which probably this week, it won't take me that long, I'll send it out to the committee members so you all have it. And then you're also, like, up to you guys, free to distribute that to, or post that wherever you think appropriate. Is that where that action is? Okay, I think we're all on the same page.
I haven't been specifically asking, but Sarah Lee, do you have any input on that?
Yes, no.
Okay, right, well, thank you for that discussion. We'll see a revised flyer and a distribution plan. And go from there. Okay, the next item is the volunteer county committee member email policy. Are you?
I can do it or you can do it either way.
I'd be
Okay,
happy.
I did send an email out to all of you this afternoon. I appreciate that maybe some of you didn't have an opportunity to check your email. The county commissioners have voted to adopt a new policy that certain committees throughout certain county committees adopt or abide by the policy that requires the committee members to only communicate with any committee business through a county email address. The Wolf Committee was one of those that are chosen as part of that. And so an email was sent to all of you this afternoon with links on how to go about that, but from now on, you will need to sign up for a county email address and then at theschutz.org. And any committee business will need to be conducted through that email address. The guidance that I got is the only thing I can communicate to you guys through your regular emails is a reminder to check your committee emails because a committee meeting has been scheduled. And that everything else needs to be done through committee or through the county email policy. This is for a variety of reasons, but it's to protect you and to protect the county. As you know, all county business is public record. We get all of my emails that I do through the county are subject to public records requests from anyone. And so we just want to protect you not using your personal email address for official county business and do it all through the county email so that the subject of public records request is only done through the county email address. So apologize. We thank you first of all for volunteering to be on the committees. We apologize, but we found it was a necessary next step to protect the county, to protect the committee members, and to protect the committee member work that is being done. Any questions on that? Okay, so you all have in your inbox directions for next steps on that. and it is a little bit of upfront work, you have to take a little like.
I kind of just sent it to them.
Send
Yeah.
a reminder.
I will send another reminder, after this meeting. And it has a due date of June 15th because most committees who are subject to this rule met in May, when this came out, and I just asked if I could wait until we met in person to discuss the policy beforehand. So your leeway time is a lot shorter, but there will be a grace period there to get everyone up and running. You just have to do a quick cyber security training video online. We have to do it too. It's pretty quick. And then just sign an agreement and then you'll have a committee email address. So I will send reminders and ping individuals as we go through this process. We really appreciate your cooperation. We understand it's an extra lift on everything else you're doing. So thank you for
Into this. Yeah, apologies for, for being designated one of these special committees that has to have these county emails. It's a sign that you do really important stuff.
I thought it was a great idea.
Great.
But yeah, nobody wants someone saying, hey, I want all your emails that, use the word wolf or compensation or blah, 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 for this period. And you have to go and dig that out of your Gmail or whatever, so.
It's really a protection measure for everyone.
Media policy.
Yeah, so just wanted to review the media policy. At our very first meeting, that was a year ago, we established a loose media policy, which was that no individual committee member would speak on the committee on behalf of the committee as a whole. Any individual committee member can speak on their own prerogative, but just as certainly as it's not on behalf of the committee. And at that time, any media statement that was requested from the media would go through me first and then usually I reach out to Commissioner Chang as the chair of our committee. But we've had very little media inquiry after our first couple of ones. So with that and reviewing the policy, that was the policy we established at our first meeting, but we also said we would review the policy in 6 months. So it's a year later. Just wanted to review that policy to see if that's what the committee wants to continue going forward, or if you want to consider a different media policy.
So the policy right now is, media inquiries are supposed to come through you and you'll typically refer those to the chair. And people are allowed to speak about this subject matter individually whenever they want, but you're not allowed to speak on behalf of the committee.
Yeah, not as a representative of the whole committee,
The basic part.
or or take a position on behalf of the committee. That's the other half.
And it's tricky because, media like to ask questions and, they're not always the most careful about attributing which hat you were wearing when you said what, so, if you're speaking individually about this subject matter area, just gotta really, really emphasize to people. I am talking today as me or as a member of such and such club, but, not as a member of the committee.
Oh, good.
Does that still work?
Love it.
So do we need to take a formal position on that, Nick, or are we good with that discussion? Okay, so we're gonna keep the policy as is going forward.
Yes.
Okay,
The bulletin editor left when we started.
yeah, so we had the bulletin, I don't know if you all are aware, but the bulletin was on the whole, most of the meeting. I think they were probably interested.
Well, we'll see if he writes an editorial about it. I don't know what that committee is doing. Okay, the next topic is, 5 minutes long. The committee chair consideration. Another thing that we determined at our first meeting was that I was gonna serve for the first 6 months on an interim basis as the chair for the committee, and I'm more than happy to turn over that duty to someone else if someone is really excited about doing it. Steve-
Steve on.
He's like, he's like, I ran that subcommittee.
Thought you ran well, Aaron.
Also, I mean, I'm also happy to continue to serve in that role. I feel like we're through the hardest stuff. So, it's not a huge additional burden to serve as chair also. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I nominate Phil to continue. Oops. As committee chair.
Does anybody have other nominations? I mean, Ethan not being here, it's kind of a risky move for him.
We all nominating Ethan?
He showed us the cute baby, so I think we're gonna cut him some slack. Okay, well, there was a motion to
Seconded.
We wanna do it, can we do it for a specific time period?
thank you. Yeah, can you add your motion?
Well, up till a year from now, a year from our start. Well, no, we are at a year for our start. So how about until next year?
For a 1-year term?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I'm.
and are you seconding that?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
I-
All those opposed? Anything from Sarah Lee?
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Should I?
yeah,
Aye, she and I.
very good. Well, I'll be happy to serve as your chair for another year.
Sorry, who was the second on that one?
Me.
Okay.
We're almost all caught up. We do have, we take time during every meeting for public comment. Is there anyone who wants to make a public comment? Well, is there anyone who wants to make public comment? Seeing none, we can go on to next steps. We need to discuss when our next meeting date is going to be and the frequency of meetings. Just coming out of today, one of the sort of like one of the items that it seems like the item that we need follow up the soonest on is the outreach and education strategy, getting this flyer out to the appropriate places. Was there something else today?
I thought we decided how we're gonna do that flyer.
Okay,
I don't think we need another meeting
okay,
to do that
all
flyer.
right. Do you want people to take a look at it you're gonna put it in a flyer form, circulate it for one last look, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe Nick can answer this. I'm not sure I can send out via email, even if it's BCC, having the entire group vote on whether that flyer is good, because that's not public record. We could do, I believe, we could do something where 1 or 2 members, it's not a quorum in this meeting, I believe, look at that flyer and provide any additional feedback before it goes out. Am I along the right lines here of what we can and can't do with via email, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it might be helpful for this committee, since you don't meet on a regular basis, Sherry. I mean, it doesn't seem like you meet on a monthly basis.
That's our next discussion.
Like, for example, our local public safety coordinating council, they actually have a policy that allows them to vote by email. And so it might be helpful to consider a policy like at a future meeting, but given it's just feedback for a flyer, I don't.
Then it's fine sending,
I think
okay.
it's fine. I don't think that you need any form. It's not like you're taking a major action
Right.
on policy or compensation or something of that nature. It's.
I mean, I think it's mostly just like, hey, like that word shouldn't be there.
Okay, so I love more sets of eyes, because I'm not an editor, so I will, do a few tweakings to it, send it out BCC, if you guys can just reply individually to me on any feedback you have, and I'll put a timeline on that. Maybe give you a week to look at it, and then start distributing it. Once we have the final one, I'll distribute it to all the committee members, but also to all of our partner agencies to start getting that word out. Great. So one of the things I put in here about next meeting dates is a lot of the committees find it easier for scheduling to meet, like one of the committees I work with meets on a quarterly basis, and they always meet on the third Wednesday on the first month of the quarter. So every January, April, July, October is when I think I got those quarters right. But so that they already always know in their schedule, we're gonna meet on the third Wednesday this month, every month, standard meeting. I kind of have the feeling that maybe we're at a more regular pattern of meeting, but I'm gonna defer that all to you. We can continue to do these meetings as we see fit, and do these doodle polls, or we can do a little bit more structured meeting times, or we can discuss this at the next meeting. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, if that outreach piece is the only thing that we need another check-in real soon about, which we're now gonna do by email, then I don't see any reason to meet more frequently than quarterly. Or you know, more frequently than, you know, a quarter from now. Do we want to assign a regular one, or, you know, a regular, you know, schedule to that, or say about quarterly and we'll doodle each one, or?
What was the requirement?
There's no requirement from I mean, at least one time to review grant applications. So some committees only meet once a year.
I think the doodle works fine. Everybody's a volunteer here and I'm retired. I don't have much of a problem attending any of them, but others are running businesses, so
Yeah.
I think a doodle may work better.
So a quarter from
Quarterly,
now
yeah.
would be. Early to mid-September,
I
and
think
then
so.
maybe early to mid-December.
Or I could propose getting on the quarterly schedule of October, January, April, July. That's another, it'd be just a little bit further. I think the next big thing at the next committee meeting will be if we do receive feedback and applications from this outreach to put the group meetings in there.
Do we do the quarterly and then do a doodle poll for what date the first week of the month will work?
So do you want to get on the regularly quarterly schedule, or do you want to just do it every 3 months based on one from today-ish?
Let's do the quarterly and start in October.
Okay, so I'll send out a doodle poll for an October meeting. Okay. Is that, I'm sorry, I should make sure that we're, okay.
Sounds good. Saturday's gone.
I have one other comment that Don looked into a little bit about. Talked about some of the preventative measures of carcass disposal and cleanup. Do we want to look at some compensation for that, and what are the options for people? Is that something that?
Yeah, that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to techniques, like that's the first technique that I would suggest, and not everyone. Has a backhoe.
That's
So
the first one on the list on the.
It's like the
Right.
first recommendation we made.
Reducing a crack.
So I can, currently, the county options are burial away from a water source. Or the landfill. Or drag it out in the desert and leave it, as long as it doesn't have any drugs in it. That's my understanding from DEQ.
Or have a pit on your own property, right?
Bury it.
Bury it
Yeah.
to that water, away from a water source, so,
Oh, that
It's not landfill.
yes, they
Oh,
do,
really?
they don't have a choice, DEQ told them they had to. I can look into. Can the county offer it free disposal? Cause right now they charge for it. And then there's also a local service that will pick up anywhere, but they charge for it, and they take it to the land.
So we can put this as a discussion item for our next one. I know that there is, I can't remember what county, in Eastern Oregon, there is a county that they actually use preventative measure funds. Was it
To pay.
Baker. County.
Baker to pay the landfill to have a carcass pit, and then I think there's another one, or maybe it's the same one that actually has like the resource to go and pick those up.
So two birds, one stone, because it gets rid of ravens in areas where sage grouse is present, and then also it gets rid of carcasses on the landscape to deter wolves.
That just cleans up your drainage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll put this as a discussion item then, as a probably a main discussion item for next time is options for burial
A
pits.
use of some of the extra preventative funds, or at least have them floating around. It's not gonna be that much, I'm not talking a lot.
That's gonna be like that could be another one that should be not a broad net, because if you're paying for people to expose their animals, I mean, that.
yeah.
Expensive.
And if they're not, if everyone wants to do it
Close,
right,
yeah, exactly.
it's not wolf impacted.
Maybe we could be like preload, send $2,000 to Deschutes County Solid Waste, and they just know that when someone wants to bring a carcass from an area of known wolf activity, that's their job.
You run across any ranchers, Aaron, that don't have the ability to bury a carcass, a cow carcass on their own land?
No, the only issue sometimes is in the winter time. You know, if they haven't
Frozen.
Yeah, if the ground's frozen and they don't have the means to dig in frozen ground, so winter.
Another thing is, like, we run on a bunch of lease ground and people don't want us burying our stuff there, so we pay the animal removal service to come get them. That's another part of it.
But having carcasses laying around is a really bad policy and is an attractant for wolves, so they need to be disposed of promptly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, wolves prefer to scavenge
Yeah.
over hunting. It's safer, it's easier, so it's good to get rid of that. You don't want them habituated, that's the goal. Don't get them habituated to your property.
Okay, so for the next meeting, I'll have the carcass program discussion and grant considerations. If we have any.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll reach out to these two and some others too on just what, for the carcass programs, what's being done throughout other places. I've heard lots of things, but I have no idea costs associated or how much does it cost per load. So we'll see, I'll see what I can dig up.
And hopefully we won't have any information.
One of the things you might mention, I've worked with a few producers who have struggled to dispose of like relic bone pits that just have been out there for a few generations now. And it's, you know, kind of like what Aaron's saying, they're older, leaving out. So whether or not there are any services available to them, help, you know, I mean, in the past, we have gone out with a dump trailer and just collected all of them and done it ourselves with help, of course, but I think we rented a backhoe even. That was in Climate County.
Yeah, I mean, it could be kind of application driven, right? We get a request for removing attractants, and we can figure it out with them how it's.
The problem is it's gotta be done quickly.
Gotta be done quickly, yeah. Almost just have to have a criteria, if they meet the criteria, like they can't dig, or they're too old, or whatever it might be. Almost just have to make a call, I think, get it done, whether it's ODF&W doing it, or if we had funds available though. That seems like a good use of the funds. Get rid of a carcass.
Well, I have information on how 2 counties do it, but maybe I should leave it till next.
I think
Yeah.
I think what we're discussing is what our agenda item should be for next time, so I'll reach out to you too and building our agenda for this particular topic on it. Does that work? Great.
On the chance that we get this information out, somebody comes around and says immediately, I got a carcass disposal need, then is everybody good if we just try and figure it out?
Yes, Jen just has to figure it out if it needs to be done.
Trust the people in-
I'll consult.
Okay, if it needs to be done very quickly, then. Okay. Good, thank you. All right, well, with that, 10 minutes late, sorry, adjourned.
Thanks for dinner.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
There's more pizza,
They get to go.
salad and everything.
Yeah.
Hey, again.